This video is sponsored by McCurdy, the free-to-play, immersive third-person shooter. Hey, 42 here. In December of 1976, coroner to the stars, Dr. Thomas Noguchi, was faced with an unusual case. He was no stranger to peculiar post-mortems, having conducted autopsies for the likes of Marilyn Monroe, Janis Joplin, and Natalie Wood, to name just a few. But this case was different. The corpse weighed only 23 kilograms and was as shriveled as an octogenarian's scrotum. Its ears and fingers were missing, and a hangman's noose had been bolted to its neck, which oozed a thick yellow slime. Oh, and it was dressed as a cowboy and spray-painted neon orange. Even for Hollywood, this was a bit weird. The body had been dead for a long time too. Lodged inside its chest was a turn-of-the-century bullet, and its veins had been pumped full of arsenic. Nowadays, a body full of arsenic would be a pretty good indicator of poisoning, but back in the early 20th century, arsenic was routinely used for body preservation. Someone had clearly wanted to conserve this corpse. But who was he, and how had he arrived at the coroner's bench?
Forget everything you think you know about mobile games, because one of the most ambitious shooter projects of 2021 is here, and it's going to change everything. Introducing McCurdy. Playing Mech is the most immersive experience you'll find on a smartphone, and it can only really be compared with the biggest PC and console titles. And the best part? It's totally free. So you start by choosing which mech you want to use, and then you can jump right into battle with other players. For me, Killshot is the most effective mech, thanks to its maneuverability with its quick dash ability. I also find it adapts really well to most maps because you can equip a long-distance plasma cannon with a close-up shotgun, so you've got all angles covered. I love the amount of personalization in this game, with heaps of different mechs available to unlock and upgrade. You can choose custom weapons, skins, and even paint jobs. This month, McCurdy's releasing 2 awesome new maps for you to play on, along with its first ever Battle Pass with loads of special missions and some brilliant rewards to win. So if you feel like some extreme mechanical warfare, then it's a great time to start playing. McCurdy is completely free to play on Android and iOS right now. And even better, you can use my personal link or scan the QR code to get 1 Steel Reaper skin, 500 A coins, and 70,000 credits to help kickstart your gameplay. And if you're quick, you can add me to your friends as 42 and we can play some matches together. So don't wait around.
For most of the examination, the man's identity remained a total mystery. It was only when Noguchi looked inside its desiccated mouth that the mummy's secrets began to unravel. Behind its folded tongue was a 50-year-old penny and ticket stubs for Louis Sonny's Museum of Crime. When the police tried to track down the owner of said museum, they found he died decades before. They did manage to get hold of his son though, and as luck would have it, he was able to identify this strange corpse. It was none other than Elmer McCurdy, the Oklahoma outlaw. That was one mystery solved, but if anything, it only raised more questions. You see, not only had Elmer McCurdy been dead for 65 years before he made it onto Dr. Noguchi's slab, his body had been found in the most unusual of places, a fairground ride. That in itself was pretty strange, but even stranger was the fact that nobody who worked at the fairground had any idea one of their jump scare mannequins was actually a real human corpse. So the question was, how did it get there? Born in Maine in 1880, Elmer spent most of his life drifting around the Midwest, working as a miner and a plumber. No one ever kept him on for long, but Elmer knew that he was destined for bigger and better things. After a brief stint in the army, he decided it was time to try something new. To follow in the footsteps of the daredevil desperados of the old Wild West. By 1911, he'd managed to persuade a couple of his mates to help him rob a train, rumoured to be carrying $4,000 in cash, worth over $100,000 in today's money. The aspiring assailants successfully stopped the vehicle and found their way to the money safe. Elmer had been taught how to use explosives, specifically nitroglycerin, whilst in the army, so it fell to him to blow the safe open. It was his time to shine, or at least it should have been. As you can probably imagine, a little goes a long way when it comes to nitroglycerin, but in his excitement, Elmer didn't just blow the safe's door off, he disintegrated the entire thing, along with all the cash inside and most of the train carriage. I can only assume he'd never seen the Italian Job. Unsurprisingly, Elmer's co-conspirators didn't invite him along on their next excursion. But that didn't stop him, not in the slightest. In fact, just a few months later, he'd already assembled a new team of transgressors and was planning his next heist to rob the Citizens Bank of Chautauqua, Kansas. They could have gone in through the front door, but that would have been too conventional. Instead, they spent 2 hours bashing through the wall with a hammer before setting about blasting open the bank's outer vault. Optimistically, Elmer once again put himself in charge of the explosives. Perhaps a little nervous after the train incident, this time he dialed things down a bit on the nitroglycerin front. Unfortunately, whilst he successfully managed to blow the bloody doors off, the safe within was untouched. With time running out, Elmer and his crew grabbed a few handfuls of silver coins and fled. Third time lucky? Perhaps, and it just so happened that the following month, a train was supposed to pass through Oklahoma, carrying $400,000 in cash. Elmer was sure this was going to be his big break. He could feel it in his bones. And so, on the 6th of October 1911, he and his gang held up the train and clambered on board. Flailing their guns around, they searched for the safe, but it was nowhere to be found. And there was a very good reason for that. They'd robbed the wrong train. Elmer and his crew came away with a measly $46, a coat, the conductor's watch, and 2 jugs of whiskey, in what the local newspaper later called one of the smallest train robberies in history. Not quite the notoriety Elmer had been hoping for. Deflated and defeated, he trudged home, which at the time was a well-appointed hayloft in his mate's barn. Nestled amongst the hay bales, he drowned his sorrows in stolen whiskey, promising himself that tomorrow he would plan the best heist the world had ever seen. Soon, he fell asleep, blissfully unaware of the $2,000 bounty that had been placed on his head. Unfortunately for him, sheriffs Bob and Stringer Fenton and their mate Dick Wallace were very much aware of this bounty, and they'd used their bloodhounds to track Elmer down. The next morning, when a bleary-eyed Elmer stepped outside the barn, the 3 sheriffs were waiting for him, pistols raised. Being threatened with guns was the last thing Elmer needed, especially on a hangover. And so, without thinking, he reached for his own weapon and opened fire. "You'll never take me alive," he shouted. And they never did. After a grueling shootout, Elmer lay dead with a bullet in his chest. The very bullet that Dr. Thomas Noguchi would rediscover some 65 years later. Now, it should have been curtains for Elmer McCurdy, but in actual fact, our Oklahoma Outlaws story is only just beginning. You see, Elmer's body was taken to Undertaker Joseph Johnson in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, where he was embalmed in arsenic to keep him fresh until his next of kin came to claim him. But no one did. And that left Johnson in a bit of a pickle. Unless Elmer's family came for the body, Johnson wouldn't get paid. Luckily, he had an idea. Elmer, dead though he was, would have to make back the money for himself. and Johnson had the perfect job for him. You see, back then, gawping at the bodies of fallen felons was a pretty popular pastime, and embalmers regularly kept their corpses on display to showcase their skills. With this in mind, Johnson removed McCurdy's funeral suit and dressed him in a scruffy shirt and faded jeans. He put a rifle in his hand and stood him in the back room of the funeral home, offering customers the chance to see the bandit who wouldn't give up for the price of a single nickel. Onlookers were invited to drop this payment straight into the corpse's open mouth like a human vending machine. Hence the penny found during the autopsy. Before long, Johnson was making a real killing from this piece of human taxidermy, so much so that he drew the attention of several carnival promoters. But the embalmed bandit wasn't for sale. Not only was the corpse providing Johnson with a steady stream of income, the kids had taken a shine to Elmer. They'd kitted him out in roller skates and took great pleasure in rolling him around the shop to keep Johnson's customers on their toes. I can only imagine that when, in October 1916, two men turned up to finally claim the body of their deceased brother, they weren't overly impressed to find him rolling around on skates with a mouthful of coins. They demanded that Johnson hand Elmer over so they could take him home to their grieving mother, presumably sans roller skates, and give him the burial he deserved. Reluctantly, Johnson complied. Rest in peace, Elmer McCurdy. Well, not yet. You see, these two brothers weren't actually related to Elmer at all. They were, in fact, James and Charles Patterson, owners of the Great Patterson Travelling Carnival Show. Having heard how much of a hit Elmer had become at the funeral parlour, they decided they wanted a piece of the undead action. Posing alongside sideshow staples like the Strong Man, the Alligator Girl, the Bearded Lady, and the Torture King, Elmer was about to get his first taste of stardom. Or at least he would have done if he could have tasted anything. He was a huge hit, but behind the scenes, the Pattersons were struggling for cash, and so they used McCurdy as a security deposit for a loan which they failed to repay. In the end, they were forced to hand Elmer over to their creditor, former police officer Louis Sonny, who added the stuffed outlaw to his travelling museum of crime. Here, Elmer was really in his element, displayed amongst waxwork figures of other famous outlaws like Bill Doolin and Jesse James. He was even used as a prop for several low-budget movies, including 1967's She-Freak, which was about as good as it sounds. Unfortunately, Elmer, like many others, was a victim of the erratic nature of popular taste. By the mid-1900s, the bottom had kind of fallen out of the whole celebrity corpse business, and after Louis Sonny's death in the late 1940s, Elmer lay gathering dust in a warehouse storage unit, until 1968, when he was sold with a bunch of wax dummies to the Hollywood Wax Museum. The fame-hungry felon had finally made it to Tinseltown, but not as a bandit. In fact, not even as the corpse of a bandit. Elmer's body had deteriorated to such an extent that nobody realized it was a genuine human body. The Wax Museum's owner eventually decided Elmer wasn't realistic enough to be exhibited, and so our outlaw changed hands once again, becoming the property of Pike Amusement Park in Long Beach, California. Here, he was given a coat of bright orange paint, hung up from a noose, and, by some weird coincidence, dressed as a cowboy again, in an unintentional nod to his long-lost past. For the next 4 years, he hung in the park's ghost house, an actual dead body amongst an assortment of grimacing ghouls, blood-splattered demons, and pop-up poltergeists. Who knows how long he would have stayed there had Hollywood not come calling once more. In 1976, the ride was leased out to Universal Studios to film an episode of The $6 Million Man. For those of you who aren't familiar with your 70s sci-fi, The $6 Million Man was an American TV series featuring everyone's favourite astronaut-turned-crime-fighting cyborg, Steve Austin, and his adventures as a secret agent for the US government. The spook house was to be the backdrop for an action-packed chase scene between Steve, the nuclear-powered protagonist, and a German spy. While sprucing up the set, a prop man caught sight of Elmer's fluorescent figurine dangling from the ride's ceiling. His body was, at this point, so light that the rush of the rickety passenger carts left him swinging violently through the air like a demonic hammock. Worried that this might distract from the action of the scene, the prop man pulled Elmer down from the noose. Only he tugged a little too hard, and Elmer's fragile arm broke off in his hands. And, looking down at the damage, the prop man saw something that made his stomach churn. Instead of crumbling plaster, he was confronted with the grisly remnants of aged muscle and broken bone. Production ground to a halt, and the body was whisked away to the coroner's office. The story of the funhouse mummy made headlines across the country and garnered Elmer McCurdy the international fame he had always dreamt of. Just goes to show, it's never too late to achieve your dreams. After his autopsy, Elmer was transported back to Oklahoma, where he was finally laid to rest at the Summit View Cemetery in Guthrie. He was buried next to the famous outlaw Bill Doolin, founder of one of the most powerful outlaw groups in the Old West, and no doubt one of Elmer's heroes. By this time, old Elmer had picked up quite a fan base, and over 300 people attended his graveside service. But to make sure no one else could ever profit from his tired mummy, the coroner ordered that 2 feet of concrete be poured over his casket, just in case. It might have taken him 65 years, but Elmer McCurdy, the Oklahoma outlaw, now, finally, rests in peace. Thanks for watching. Good news, you can now pre-order my new book, Bread and Circuses, What Did the Romans Ever Do for Us? It's a wild and witty journey for 1,000 years of unexpected Roman history, told in a refreshing way and packed full of incredible and unbelievable stories. Copies are selling out fast, so pre-order yours today to lock it in. Thank you.